Okay, welcome back everyone as we continue our Tuesday night marathon as we get ready for Shavuos, and we learn, of course, to be Mekayim the mitzvah d'oraisa v'dibarta ba malasos nachas ruach liyitzreinu. Those that were on the Zoom last night know that we learn Torah Lishma because this is it. So many things we do for something else, but we do this because this is the purpose of life. This is it. That shir, what is Torah Lishma, Shavuos Insights 5783, is available already on TorahAnytime.com. And by the way, I have started loading slowly but surely shiurim to YouTube. And we already have, I think, 26 shiurim on YouTube. There's the last shir I uploaded to YouTube is a shir I gave by the grave of Yishai and Rus in Eretz Yisrael. That's also on YouTube, and there are I put on shiurim about marriage and about tefillah, so that's all on YouTube. Ben Tripp is asking us to please learn Le'iloi Nishmas Bella Dabri Bas Meir Moshe. A neshama should have an aliyah, and we learn with the tefillah that all children should get easily into yeshiva without any hardship and without any difficulty. We are holding now by Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak now says a different explanation of the two different opinions about whether a get brought from a boat in the water of Eretz Yisrael, whether you have to say b'fani nechta, b'fani nechta. First he says definitively, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar b'naros to Eretz Yisrael, if it's actually territorial waters of Eretz Yisrael, then the Kuli Almalei Pligi. Everybody agrees, then that's part of Eretz Yisrael. It has nothing to do with the earth under it. If it's the waters of territorial waters of Eretz Yisrael, it has nothing to do whether it draws from the earth or not. You do not have to say b'fani nechta, b'fani nechta. Elaki Pligi b'yam hagadol. They argue about the water of the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean, vis-a-vis, relative to Eretz Yisrael, the biggest body of water was Mediterranean. Since Eretz Yisrael is what counts, that's why the Mediterranean is called the Yam HaGadol, the Great Sea. Now here we're talking about where a get was brought from a boat on the Mediterranean. And here, what they argue is as follows. The Tanya, Ezel Eretz, we know that on the northern border of Eretz Yisrael were the Horei Armoin, were the mountains of Armoin. And the Gemara wants to know which part of the mountains of Armoin are still considered within the territories of Eretz Yisrael. The Tanya, Ezel Eretz, what part of the Horei Amnon are Eretz Yisrael, and what part are not? Anything that sloped downward from the peak of Amnon towards Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Yisrael. Miturei Amnon v'lechutz, anything that sloped from the peak of Amnon towards away from Eretz Yisrael is Chutz La'aretz. Hanisim shebiyam. Now the Nisim means the islands. Hanisim shebiyam, islands in the Mediterranean. Royanai son, we view them kilu chut masuach aleim, as if there's a line drawn miturei amnain, from Turei Amnain, which is from the west, ad Nachal Mitzrayim, until the river of Mitzrayim, and anything minachutu lefnim, any islands within that line is Eretz Yisrael. Minachut v'lechutz, any islands that are from that line outward is chutz la'aretz. I made a mistake when I said Miturei Amna Nachal Mitzrayim. That's not eastward, that's southward. On the west, you draw a line Miturei Amnon from the peak of Amnon, which is in the northwest, ad Nachal Mitzrayim, until the river of Mitzrayim that flowed into the Mediterranean to the east, to the south. Minachut v'lefnim, within that line is Eretz Yisrael. Minachut v'lechutz, outside of that line is chutz la'aretz. Rabbi Yehuda says that kol shekeneged Eretz Yisrael, anything that any part of the Mediterranean, this is much more inclusive, any part of the Mediterranean that's opposite Eretz Yisrael, Harihu Eretz Yisrael, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Shenemar ugvul yom, the border to the west, v'hoya lachem hayom hagadol, that's the Mediterranean, ugvul zeh yeh lachem gvul yom, and this border would be the border of the west. Now that's a repetition. It just said ugvul. It's just said in the pasuk ugvul yom, the border of the west, v'hoya lachem hayom hagadol, and then it repeats again. Ugvul zeh yelachem gvul yom. Why is it repeated? It's coming to repeat it to tell you that this Mediterranean, which is on the west, is considered the western border of Eretz Yisrael, all the way till Gvul Yom, all the way till the Atlantic Ocean. Vanisin shebetzadin, but islands to the side, Roy and Isan, we view them ki'ilu chut masuach, as if there's a line drawn mikpluria v'ad yamakainis, from Kepluria until Yamakainis, the Kepluria, which is a city which is on the peak of the Hari Amnon. So you draw a line from Kepluria until the ocean, or Menachal Mitzrayim vad Yamakyonis, and from Nachal Mitzrayim until the ocean. So this encases the western side from the northwest until the southwest. Anything that's in those lines, Minachut v'lefnim Eretz Yisrael, within those lines is Eretz Yisrael up till the ocean. Minachut v'lechutz, but outside of the line of the northern peak and the line of the southern Kepluria is those islands are not Eretz Yisrael proper. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, the boats traveling in the areas of the waters of the Mediterranean all the way till the ocean that parallels Eretz Yisrael, even then you would not have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. Now, the Rabbanan, what do they do with the fact that it says Gvul Yam a second time? They say it doesn't extend all the way to the ocean. Rabbanan hay Gvul my Abdilay. He says Mebaylei Lenisin. It's coming to include the islands in the Mediterranean. Otherwise, we might think that it's only Eretz Yisrael up till the Mediterranean. Rabbi Yehuda, no, Nisan Leitzrichakra. You don't need for the islands, because since that's within the borders of Eretz Yisrael, you don't need a pasuk to include it. Now, Reb Meir Omer, Akoy Ke'eretz Yisrael. Now the Gemara switches topics. Now, we learned already before that you're not supposed to sell your Evet Kanani from Eretz Yisrael to outside of Eretz Yisrael. Because if you sell your Evet from Eretz Yisrael to outside of Eretz Yisrael, you're being mafkiya him. He has mitzvahs like a woman. You're being mafkiya him from the mitzvahs of Eretz Yisrael. So if you do sell him outside of Eretz Yisrael, we counsel you that you have to give him a get shichur, a writ of emancipation. Now, there are territories that are considered kibush yochid. They were conquered by an individual. David HaMelech conquered the areas called Syria, which is Aram Tzoiva and Aram Naharayim. And the question is, does that have a din of Eretz Yisrael or not? So we're going to see it has a quasi-status of Eretz Yisrael, and there's actually a split decision on when it has a din of Eretz Yisrael and when it doesn't. So let's see. And again, bravo to everybody for staying. I know it's not easy. It's never easy to hear, oh, he's doing 2 blot tonight. I can't believe it. So says the Gemara, Rameir Aimer Akka Keretz Yisrael, Bo Minei Rabbi Chia Bar Abba, HaMoicher Avdei L'Surya. Who would do that? Marshall. Marshall sells, you should see Reb Goldstein in the back. He's so surprised that I used you, Marshall, as an example. So Hamoicher Avdei L'Surya. Marshall says he should be so lucky to have an Evan. Hamoicher Avdei L'Surya. Who would want to be Marshall's Evan? They're
lined up around the block. Don't worry.
Yeah. They're lined up around the block to leave. Hamoicher Avdei L'Surya. If Marshall sells his Evan Kanani in Surya, is that like selling him to Chutz La'aretz and that he has to give a writ of emancipation or not? Akoy is like Eretz Yisrael. Legittin in, only for Gittin, but la'avodim loy, but not as it pertains to selling slaves. And v'kol shrein Surya, and surely Surya, the Mircha Ketuva, which is much further than Akko away from Eretz Yisrael. So the din is if he would sell his slave to Syria, he would be forced to write a writ of emancipation. So now the Gemara tells us that there is actually the areas of the annexation of David HaMelech is actually nishtahin and nishtaher. It depends. Tad Rabbanan. In 3 ways, the area of Aram Tzova, Aram Narayim, which is a lot of modern day Syria, is like Eretz Yisrael. In 3 ways, it's like Chutz La'aretz. Afra Tomei Chutz La'aretz, it's earth where geyser that it should be Tomei because they don't mark the graves like Chutz La'aretz. V'amoicher Avdei L'Surya, and if you sell your slave to Syria, it's like selling him out of Eretz Yisrael, and you have to write a get shichrer. V'amevi get Syria, and if you bring a get from Syria, you have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam k'mevi b'chutz la'aretz. So in those 3 ways, it's like bringing it from. It's like chutz la'aretz. Or b'shleish Eretz Yisrael. In 3 ways, it's like Eretz Yisrael. Number 1, chayeves b'maiser b'shviyas k'Eretz Yisrael. You have to take maiser. Trumas and Maisers, like in Eretz Yisrael. There's a din of Shemitah, like Eretz Yisrael. Even if you hold that in Chutz La'aretz, you're not allowed to go there in a Sheda Teva Migdal. You're not allowed to go in a box, in a chest. You're not allowed to go because they were geyser on the soil that it din like a corpse, that it's metame ba'oil. And even though you're in a box, so it should be mafsik, but oil zorik lo yishmei oil. An oil that's moving is not considered an oil. But that's only in Chutz La'aretz. But in Syria, in the area of Syria, you could go in a box. They weren't geyser that it should be metame ba'oil. And finally, v'akaina sada b'Syria, if you buy a field in Syria, kikaina b'ferure Yerushalayim, it's as if you brought it in the environs. It's as if you bought it in the neighborhoods of Yerushalayim, and we allow you, since we want you, this is talking about when you buy from a guy, we want you to drive the goyim out of these lands, so we allow you that you should have the guy write a deed of sale even on Shabbos. And even though normally Amir al-Akim is Aser, but for Yishuv Eretz Yisrael we allow it. So now the Gemara explains each one. And we're already on Amud Beis. We already see the end in sight. Because I know some people want to go to sleep a little earlier in order to be able to stay up Shavuos night. Excuse me. Chayeves b'maiser b'shvias k'Eretz Yisrael. It's chayev b'maiser and shvias like Eretz Yisrael. Kasava, because they hold, now getting right to the root of it, that kibush yochid shmei kibush, that the conquest of David is considered a conquest, and therefore it has din of Eretz Yisrael proper, as regards tithing and shmita. V'roit to the kanas lo b'tara nichnas, and if he wants to enter b'tara, he can enter. Says, well, what do you mean? But you just said that its soil is tamei. V'amrit afra tamei. Says the Gemara, it's talking about when you want to go in b'sheda teva migdal, in a box, in a chest, and in a closet. The Tanya hanichnas l'eretz ha'amim b'sheda teva migdal, Rebbe matame. Rebbe says that it's matame ba'oil, and the chest doesn't protect you because it's an oil zorek, it's mobile, and an oil zorek lo yishmei oil. While Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda matar. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says that it's an oil zorek is a good oil, so it's mafsik. But Vafilu Rabbi that says that you can't go into a box because it's matame ba'oil, like matame ela be'eretz ha'amim. That's only in the actual diaspora. The gazu al gusha v'al avira, that there were geyser on the soil and also on the airspace. Aval Surya, there you could go in a box, al gusha gazu, al avira loy gazu. They didn't decree on the airspace. V'akoyna sada b'surya k'koyna b'farure Yerushalayim. When you buy it b'farvore Yerushalayim, the Art Scroll says b'farvore Yerushalayim. If you buy in Surya, it's as if you're buying in the neighborhoods of Yerushalayim. L'may hilchasa Rav Sheishis loyma shekoisvin alav unai, that you could have the guy write the shtar. V'afilu b'Shabbos. The Gemara thinks at first glance it sounds like that you could do it on Shabbos. B'Shabbos al g'daitach, you could write a deed on Shabbos. Chas v'shalom. So it's a doraisa. Ksiva is one of the lamates malachas. Kida'amar Rava, just like Rava said elsewhere. Oimer loy v'kechav ma'isa for chayil she'ein bas akana. You could tell a guy to do malach on Shabbos. Hachanami, here too, Oimer loy v'kechav ma'isa. You could tell the guy to write the deed of sale on Shabbos. And even though telling a guy is an Issur Rabbanan, Mishum Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, in order that we should occupy more land in Eretz Yisrael and be secure of driving out the guy, like the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan didn't make a decree, as we welcome in Harrison Kletzel joining us. Tan Rabbanan. And by the way, we don't say Tachnun. It's the 3 days of preparation. Shloishes Yimei Agbala. There's no greater preparation than learning Torah. No greater way to prepare for Matan Torah than to learn Torah. Now here we have an interesting thing. We know that an Eved needs to have, just like a woman when she's released from a marriage, she needs a get. An Eved to be released from bondage and to acquire his freedom, he needs a get. And it's similar to a get of an Isha. So therefore, if an Eved would bring a get shechrer, he has to say, B'fani nichta, b'fani nechta. So Tana Rabbanan, Eved shehevi gitai, if an Eved brings his get, because of by atzmacha unichsaye knuyalach, and it says in it that the owner wrote to him. Let's say the owner is Mr. Schwarzkopf. Mr. Schwarzkopf writes to Tony, his Eved, that Atzmacha unichsaye knuyanach. Yourself and the rest of my property are awarded to you. So Mr. Schwarzkopf wants to move into the mansion. Now, he says, b'fanei nichta, b'fanei nechta. So atzma ikana. He acquires himself. Because where did they give the leniency of b'fanei nichta, b'fanei nechta? Only to the get shecher. But nechasim laikana, he can acquire himself. For that, you need two witnesses. Ibaylu, what about if he said, Kol nichsaye knuyin lach? He comes in and says, all my property is acquired by you. Amar Abaye, so Abaye says, since he gets himself, because we believe the b'fanei nichta for himself, and it's all in one statement, he gets the property too. So Rava says that doesn't make sense. Why should he get the mansion? Amalei Rava Bishlam atzma liknei, because midei dave gerisha. We say that the get shikra is like a gerisha. El nechasim loy niknei, because there you need two witnesses. Midei dave akim shtaris dalma. You need two witnesses. So Abaye says, okay, Hadar Amar Abaye mitoch shaloi kana nechasim. Since he doesn't get the mansion and it's all in one statement, like kanatzma, he doesn't get himself. Amalei Rava, so Rava says again that's not necessarily true. Bishleim elachasim loy liknei. He doesn't get the mansion because it's midei davi akim shtaris dalma. You like the confirmation of signatures. You need two witnesses. Elatzma liknei, but he should get himself midei davi agarisha. Gemara is going to say that means that Rava holds palginon dibura, that we could chop up his words, and when he says that your everything is acquired by you, we believe about himself and not about the mansion. Elama Rava echad zeh ve'echad zeh. Whether he said you and the property, or even if he said just all the property, atzmai kana, he acquires himself, but nechasim loy kana. We're going to stop over here now, Rabbi Isai.